We acknowledge also struggle stalwarts who have attended the reopened inquest, including Lalo Chiba, former Robben Islander, who served 18 years in Robben Island and has lived to see the reopening of this inquest. Ibrahim, former Robben Islander, who served 14 years in Robben Island and subsequently was kidnapped from Swaziland in 1986 and then sentenced to 20 years imprisonment for his activities of the African National Congress and the Liberation Movement. It was only in 1990, after the unbanning of the ANC, that Ibrahim was released. We'd also like to acknowledge Stephanie Kem, a former political prisoner, a detainee and political prisoner in the 1960s, who kept the flames alive during her period in exile in England. She was part of the underground activities of the South African Communist Party, and she was the main contact of Ahmed as far as the communication, the correspondence of Ahmed's activities in the underground. And Stephanie Kemp was the person who was receiving that communication for the leadership of the Communist Party in London and the African National Congress. I'd like to thank particularly those detainees in 1971 who were detained as a result of Ahmed and Salim Essop's arrests. Salim Essop was subjected to the most brutal torture, and we are grateful that he's alive today. And he has come from Leeds in the United Kingdom to give this testimony after 46 years. Dr. Dilshad Jatam, I think it is the evidence of Dr. Dilshad Jatam that actually gives us an indication around what time that Ahmed was either in a coma or he had died. And Professor Kantla Naik, who is not present here, who was my school teacher from Rudipur, right, I think the torture that he was subjected to is still reliving today. But particularly Salim and Dr. Dilshad Jatam, I think we need to commend them. They've had to they've lived with this for the past 46 years. And now they had to live through what happened to them in 1971. They had to live through it by giving testimony in this particular inquest court at the reopening of the inquest. I'd like to welcome Deputy General Secretary of the South African Communist Party, Comrade Solly here, and Communist Party members who have stood by us throughout this period of the inquest. Whenever Solly entered court, he always had red and always mistook him for whether he's a member of the EFF or he's a member of the party. But today decided to wear white. But thanks, Comrade Solly. And I'd also just like to state that the South African Communist Party had given an award to Ahmed Timol at its recent Congress in July of 2017, an award of his bravery and his engagement in the struggle against apartheid. I note that on the 27th of October, and in 10 days' time, it will be 46 years since the arrest of Ahmed Timol and Salim Essop at around 11 p.m. In Johannesburg. It was 46 years of a nightmare that began, of detention of many people, and it had disrupted the life of many others. But they kept the hope that one day South Africa will be free because of the contribution they made and because of what they were subjected to during the period of detention. And 46 years have also gone by that those who murdered Ahmed and those who tortured the detainees that are here today. Salim, who subsequently Salim was sentenced to 5 years in imprisonment, and he was in the same section as Nelson Mandela and Walter Sisulu. He was sentenced in 1972. That Salim is here with us today, right? But those interrogators, those feared members of the security branch during that nightmare of apartheid, they are no longer here so that we could have brought them to account for their actions. And lastly, I'd like to thank the NDPP for making it possible for this case, the inquest, to be reopened. It took years for Imtiaz and the Foundation for Human Rights engaging with them, and finally that they agreed that we do have new evidence. And we believe that this is the beginning to uncover all those people who were subjected to the most brutal deaths at the hands of the security police. We have here the brother of Matthew Malibane, who was killed in 1977 at John Foster Square, and his body was thrown from the 10th floor of John Foster Square. His brother is here today, and his father is 93 years old, would also want closure. And we hope that the NPA will begin to pursue these matters. I wish to introduce our panel who will address you. That's Dr. Marjorie Jobson, who has played a most vital role for supporting political detainees and those that have disappeared. She's the director of the Kulumani Support Group. We have the son of a great South African, a great patriot, a great fighter for justice and for equality, and for the restoration of the dignity of the black people. We have Nkosinathi Biko here, who will be part of the panel. We have Toko, the chairperson of the Foundation of Human Rights, who's part of the panel here. And we have our veteran human rights lawyer, Advocate George Bizos, who was there in the 1972 inquest. He was there during this most difficult period of apartheid. Advocate George Bizos, as you know, has participated in many political trials as well as in the inquests of deaths of detainees. And we have here my nephew, Imtiaz Ahmed, who was 5 years old when Ahmed was murdered in detention by the security police. And it is through him and his efforts for the past 15 years now that we have finally got the justice that we were longing for the past 46 years. Imtiaz, we really acknowledge and commend you for your persistence in getting this inquest reopened. Before handing over to the panel, I would like to read a message we have received from Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And he states, and it's dated the 12th October 2017, and the bishop states that I wish to pay very warm tribute to Ahmed Timol's family, 19 years after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission found the police directly responsible for Timol's death. And the inquest, a sham, the family finally succeeded in persuading the state to re-examine the case. While it is said that it took so long, and that there are many other TRC matters that have been left unresolved. It is exciting that the Timol family had been driven not by vengeance, but by the pursuit of the truth and justice. And this is what democratic South Africa should be, is truth and justice. I thank you. We open discussion for the panel. And we've got questions. But we have, I think there's a time factor, and we got to recognize that we have a court in session there. So I think it's 12 now, and we'll give 30 minutes for questions.
Let's just go through the.
We'll
do the questions,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
in September, South Africa commemorated the killing in detention of anti-apartheid activist Suleiman Babla Saluji that took place in 1964, Imam Harun that was killed in 1969, and Stephen Bantu Biko that was killed in police detention in 1971. Sorry, 1977. They and Ahmed Timol were among at least 73 political detainees who died while in the hands of the police between 1963 and 1990. And nobody has ever been held responsible for any of these deaths. Most instances did not take place. Deaths of political detainees were recorded as accidents or suicides. Post-mortem examinations went unrecorded, if they were ever held, and the bodies were buried as quickly as possible. Although the Timol family never doubted that Uncle Ahmed was murdered by the police, and the inquest was a
That was the Ahmed Timol family press briefing taking place in court
it very difficult
after
to
the
persuade
judgment
the
in
NPA
the
to
Timol
reopen this
inquest.
matter. This will present legal challenges for families of those for whom medical records do not exist or they've been destroyed. My plea to all South Africans is not to forget that there are many other families throughout the country whose losses of loved ones at the hands of the apartheid security police have never been adequately, if at all, acknowledged. The Timol family urges the National Director of Public Prosecutions and the National Prosecution Authority to reopen all cases relating to the killing of political activists. We would like to view the reopened Timol inquest as a beginning and definitely not the end. I'd just like to briefly speak about our motivation for pursuing this particular. We are a patriotic family living in a democratic South Africa and a democratic society that Uncle Ahmed had fought for, and for which he ultimately paid the highest sacrifice. When my grandparents, Uncle Ahmed's mother, Mrs. Hawa Timol, who I would fondly refer to as Ma, gave evidence to the TRC Commission 21 years ago, she made it very clear that she sought was a revision of the official record that stated that Uncle Ahmed had committed suicide. My grandfather, Haji Timol, or Papa as I would call him, had always been very clear that the family would not pursue a civil claim as it did not want to receive blood money. We, who have survived Ma and Papa, have tried to be faithful to the pursuit of the truth. We have never sought vengeance, and whenever I have approached former members of the security police involved in Uncle Ahmed's interrogation, I've always done so explicitly in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. Having said that, the family was bitterly disappointed by the testimonies of former security branch officers Neville Els, João Rodrigues, and Seth Sons. It was our earnest hope that they would break cover and tell the truth about what really happened to Uncle Ahmed. By sticking to their versions of not having ever witnessed torture and only reading about it in the press, they lost an opportunity, not only for themselves, but also to contribute to South Africa's greater reconciliation project. They might have set a precedent for other security police officers to assist other families to find answers about their beloved loved ones. Those former security police officers who chose to continue to subvert the truth and evade the law should be prosecuted, regardless of their age. As we are well aware, the hunt for Nazi perpetrators of the Holocaust continues until today. I would also like to pay a special tribute to my Uncle Mohammed, Uncle Ahmed's younger brother. Many people who lived through the pain that Uncle Mohammed did, not only his pain, but also that of his parents, would have exhibited some bitterness. But Uncle Mohammed never did. He could not attend the funeral because he was in detention himself, but he did attend the entire sham inquest in 1972, along with his parents. And one can only imagine the heartbreak, 6 months after the loss of your son and brother, of having to sit through one security branch police officer after another, corroborating a pack of lies about the circumstances of his death. The agony of having to listen to the apartheid magistrate brand my grandmother a liar, of witnessing the effects of the loss on my grandfather's health, and of burying Ma before this matter could be settled. Uncle Mohammed has attended every day of the reopening inquest, to a calm and reassuring presence. 45 years have passed since Magistrate de Villiers' insulting ruling. It has been a long, uphill struggle, but 23 years into our democracy, the true circumstances of Uncle Ahmed's death have finally been ventilated, and the official record revised. I wish to thank Mr. Justice Billy Motley, not for his ruling, but for the manner in which he conducted the proceedings. Above his knowledge of the law, he showed the compassionate face of justice. The family was never in any doubt that the matter was in good hands. My grandparents, Ma and Papa, may their souls now rest in peace, are undoubtedly smiling from the heavens. There are many individuals, organizations, and institutions I would like to thank for assisting the family for reopening the inquest. They include, amongst others, the Foundation for Human Rights, the Legal Resource Center, Weber and Wenzel's, and more importantly, the former detainees and the expert witnesses who testified during these proceedings. I also would like to thank the media, past and present, for its sterling coverage of Uncle Ahmed's death. The coverage that journalists locally and internationally has given to the case in 1971 pressured the apartheid regime into conducting an inquest. You have been fantastic in your follow-through, and for that we'd like to say thank you. Finally, the inquest finding concludes an important aspect of our journey, but the journey itself continues. There are other families seeking closure who could do with our assistance. There's an exhibition on Uncle Ahmed's life and his death that is to be updated, and as always, we are always searching for funding, so if you know any donors that are available. And investigations and conclusions to finalize ahead of the publication of my second edition on my beloved uncle are at an advanced stage. So once again, I'd like to thank you.
We'll now have the panel to limit their contribution for 5 minutes, and thereafter there can be questions to that panel member. Thank you. Dr. Marjorie Jobson, yes, will come over, please. Yeah. Thank you.
So I am representing the Organization of Victims and Survivors of Apartheid-era Political Crimes, and we are very, very proud of the family of Ahmed Timol and the driving forces behind getting this case to a judgment, a reopened judicial inquest, and the corrected historical record and the truth of what happened all these 46 years ago. This has given hope to hundreds and hundreds of families, to families of people who died in detention. We understand how difficult it is to get these things into court, but the relief and the hope it restores in people is incredibly important. It also discloses the use of torture by the apartheid regime, which was something that Judge Billy Motley pointed out was, was hidden by all sorts of devious means, with testimony fabricated even into this current inquest. We were relieved to hear that he recommends further investigation and prosecution, and we think it is time that the law takes its course, and the sense of justice that when the law proceeds in the way it has in this case can give such satisfaction to victims of these crimes. We have had years and years now of impunity, especially for crimes like torture, and torture has not yet been abolished. We are also very worried that the prescription of torture, if you are tortured, you cannot bring a claim 20 years later in terms of the new legislation that was adopted a couple of years ago, a struggle that took 10 years to take through our parliament. So we want to see a constitutional democracy where the integrity of the human being, respect for human life is paramount. And we celebrate today today is a victory for those principles of our Constitution. And thank you so much to this family for leading this very, very important struggle, and for all the support of the public, the South African Communist Party, the lawyers, everybody who has played such a critical role. We are extremely grateful, and we will not give up this struggle. We will continue, because too much remains on getting the truth out into the public domain. We're very glad that there's international interest in this case. BBC from early this morning has been broadcasting about this case and the significance, especially for our own continent. So we think it's a very important development, and we're very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you go, are there any questions? But please, just 2-3 questions for Dr. Malidi, please. Are there any questions? No. Sorry? Okay, fine. I think that will be better. Fine. We now have the chairperson of the Foundation for Human Rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you for this opportunity on behalf of the Foundation for Human Rights. We must say that it's been a long journey that we took with the family to see to what extent the truth can be a real truth, not the truth that is not the truth. And so this morning, as we were listening to the judgment, we know that there were missing pages, and we want people to know that the pages in the archives are missing in some of these stories to be told. And so that is the history of South Africa. But we live in a democracy, and we hope it will never and never again happen that there are missing pages in the stories of people fighting for justice. We believe, as the Foundation for Human Rights, that every individual and every society has a right to know the truth about the past, and the fabrications that we had of withholding the information from the TRC was unjust. That is why we are here today. If only people had told the truth, they've been honorable enough to tell the truth, the family would not have come here, because then the family would have had a closure. And so we decided that we'll partner with the family. We also believe that the families have to come to in an organized fashion with organizations like Khulumani Support Group, so that they find ways in which they can share the trauma and experiences and knowledge in order for us to move forward, because generations to generations, if the truth is never told, there'll always a gap. And also, we are not pursuing these matters just to draw the link from the current and the past, but we want to make sure that we live in a just society for now and for the future generation. We therefore are quite mindful that it is possible to default to a society where people put aside the rights of others and the truth. And then we want to make sure, as the judge said this morning, that when officials of state perform their function, they perform their function with honesty, with integrity, with the justice that we all struggled for, that the Timols died for, so that people are satisfied that the justice is really being done for all and that everyone is equal, as the Constitution says. So as the Foundation for Human Rights, would like to thank the advocate, Howard Vani, who's not here after working so hard, but wherever he is, he already knows. We want to thank his junior advocate, Musandiwa. We also would like to thank Nasima Fakir of the Legal Resources Center, Morey Hethom of Weber Wenzel, and Advocate Bezos. You are our star. You are the star of the nation. Thank you so much for testifying, even in this inquest. We want to thank Ahmed Isop, the doctors, Professor Naika, who agreed to relive this experience, and who also, in particular, want to say to Imtiaz, you did this as an activist, but you also did it for your family and just for the dignity of your uncle. Thank you very much for what you did. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We will now have Kusinati Biko.
Good afternoon. I represent the Biko family and the Steve Biko Foundation. And mine is to make a brief comment. First, to thank your family, my brother, for bowing your heads and plowing through what initially seemed like a mountain of impossibilities. And this is a great victory, not only for your family, but also for this nation. Our Constitution guarantees, in the extreme, only two rights: the right to life and the right to human dignity. And it asks itself the extent to which these should be protected. And the response that it gives is that they are inviolable. Many years ago, your uncle's dignity was violated, and so was his life. And this finding is important in that it is a restorative process to give back to him his dignity. Of course, it will not resuscitate his life, but we continue to celebrate him for the contribution that he made. He represents a category of people that went through a similar experience, whose official explanation for their death is suicide, slipped on a bar of soap, and many other careless explanations. Explanations given to explain the deaths of young, healthy men and women who died in custody under the state security laws. So thank you for moving the nation to the stage, and we hope that institutions like the Foundation for Human Rights and others can kick in to take the nation further. And I do want to thank Advocate Bezos for what you represent to this nation. You have been most consistent on this matter of giving back to those that are departed their dignity, and in this case, to the evidence that you led. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Deputy Secretary General of the South African Communist Party.
No, thank you very much. From the SACP, firstly, we want to thank the family for the initiative that they took. IMTAS, this has been an excellent job. Comrade Mohammed and others from the family for the steadfastness in pursuit of justice for Comrade Ahmed Timol, who was a leading member of the party inside the country at the time. We also want to thank all the other institutions that supported the family, particularly the Human Rights Foundation, the Legal Resource Center, Weber Wenzel, and all other people that worked with them, Advocate Bezos, excellent evidence as well as intervention legally. We want to appreciate that. Mr. Datton as well. I think he should have been here as well. All those who gave us excellent expert advice to make sure that the family is able to put a solid case before the judge. And the MPA, of course. But I think most importantly to appreciate that today we now know the security forces of the apartheid government killed Comrade Ahmed Timol. That's very important. And we also want to make a big call to our government to ensure that they set up a process to investigate all those outstanding cases of many of our comrades, almost over 400 of them, those that were picked up by the TRC, indicating that they will require further investigation so that those families can receive justice, as indicated with the brother of Comrade Matthews Mabilani, who also was killed in similar circumstances at the same place in John Foster Square. And we will still seek justice for all these families. This is the most important call that we want to make, and we want to say to this achievement of the Timol family is an achievement for all of South Africa. And we want to thank the court for restoring faith in us on justice and human rights. And we can't thank more Judge Billy Mutle for the work that he has done together with his team. We are just happy as the SACP that today the memory of Comrade Timol cannot be thrown into the dustbin of apartheid history of lies, but his dignity is restored, and we can celebrate him as we have always done, now knowing that no iota of lie can stick on his incredible contribution to the liberation of our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now call upon
Once again, thank you to members of the legal representatives who assisted me greatly. At which time, Timol died while held in custody by members, and in particular page 3 of the affidavit.
Now that is currently the Ahmed Timol family press briefing that is taking place in court after the judgment in the Timol inquest. The North Gauteng High Court ruled that Ahmed Timol was pushed from the 10th floor of the John Vorster Police Station. The family thanks the co-arrested Salim Isop, who came all the way from the UK to testify. The family also thanks fellow detainees, family doctors, specialists, legal counsel, detainees, families, doctors and specialists, and the SACP leadership, the NDPP Foundation for Human Rights as well. And Imitia's Kaje Ahmed Timol's nephew also briefed the media, and he urges the NPA to reopen all cases related to the apartheid regime killings and not just those from police custody. He has also said that he thanks Judge Billy Mote. He has also thanked the media and the journalists for following through with the family on this journey.